Hi, everyone. Welcome to this follow-through workshop with your host, myself, Kim Christensen. I am a productivity coach. I help people who are interested in managing their time better with less stress to get more done. So today we're going to be talking about follow through. And so for those of you who are familiar with my philosophy on getting things done, the strategy is really straightforward. So it's just 3 steps, 3 things really. Those 3 things are choose, plan, and do. Really straightforward. Now, the complexity comes in when we are met with resistance from our own brains when we enter any one of these stages. And for the purposes of today's workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to make a working assumption that you have chosen your focus. You have created a plan and put that plan into your calendar, and you're now at the stage where you're ready to execute on the plan, follow the calendar, basically. And so for today's workshop, we're going to focus on the do stage of the choose, plan, do strategy. Now, if you have any struggles, any problems with either the choose or the plan stages, for those of you who are members in the Peaceful Productivity membership, I'll encourage you to take those questions to your coaching sessions. Now, there's 3 opportunities for coaching. As a reminder, you can take it to your private coaching session. You can take it to a group coaching session, or under the coaching tab on our Peaceful Productivity membership site under coaching, you'll see there's an opportunity for coaching Q&A. So you can enter your questions anonymously and see the responses posted there from a coaching perspective so that everyone can benefit from seeing the response. Okay, so you've got the plan in your calendar and you're getting ready to execute on it. And so let's just for a moment pretend that Monday morning arrives, 9 a.m. You open your calendar and you've got something scheduled there for 9 a.m. Let's just use as an example a PowerPoint presentation. So from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m., your outcome that you want to achieve is to create a PowerPoint presentation and send it off to a colleague for review and feedback request. Okay, so let's pretend that's what you have in your calendar for Monday morning, 9 a.m. We're going to already make the assumption that you've given yourself enough time. So the 1 hour, you know yourself well enough to know that you can complete it in that time frame, and that you have optimized the scheduling of that. So a PowerPoint presentation, if it requires a lot of thought, then you have scheduled that for the prime time thinking, focus time of your day. And for me, that really is the morning, 9 a.m. So 9 a.m., it would make sense that I would have something like that in my calendar. So you open your calendar, it's 9 a.m., and this can apply to anything that you have scheduled. There's typically 3 opportunities for your efforts to get sidetracked, either at the start stage, at the focus stage, or at the completion stage. So there's 3 steps to executing on the tasks. But no matter what step that you're at, rationalization is going to come up, sneak in. And if you're anything like me, it sounds super logical and super rational, which I guess is why they call it rationalization. So at any one of those stages, start, focus, and complete, and I'll go through each one of them separately, there's an opportunity for rationalization. Okay, so let's say that it's 9 a.m., you open up your calendar, you're getting ready to start, and there's some rationalization there. What does that rationalization typically look like for you? If you struggle to get started on a task, and we call that the friction of starting, there's typically some conversation that's happening in your head, some rationalization. Now, for me, that can take the form of something like, I will do it later. Now is not the best time for me to be doing this. I'll have more time later, so I'll do something else instead right now. I'll do this PowerPoint presentation later. So it can look something like that. It can be something like, I don't feel like it right now, so I'm not in the best frame of mind to create PowerPoints. I'm not focused, I'm distracted, I'm tired. I just don't feel like it. Some variation of that thought. Or maybe I'm second guessing the amount of time that I've given myself. This is quite common. So I'll say something like, I don't have time to complete this right now. I have something very pressing at 10 o'clock. I need to repurpose this time right now and get ready for 10 o'clock. So there's lots of different ways that we can rationalize that we don't have the time, the energy, or the headspace to do this right now. What I would like to offer is that, well, before we do that, let's just take a pause right now. I'd like you to jot down for yourself, what are a couple of rationalizations that you notice coming up when you're getting ready to start a task that you've scheduled for yourself in the calendar? I was coaching a client recently, and she found that she would often have the thought, I'm okay to schedule it. That's just fine, but there's no way I'm following through on this. So she was sabotaging herself before she even got to the start stage, just by convincing herself that she wasn't the type of person that follows through. So there's a lot of different reasons why you might not be able to start on a task, a lot of different rationalizations, excuses. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to offer you one reframe today, and I'll invite you to experiment with different types of reframes that work best for you, but I'll offer you a reframe that works really well for me. So what that reframe is I call it the 10-minute rule. And what it does is it essentially, and I'm sure you've heard of this before, is you tell yourself that after 10 minutes, you can delay it, change your mind, tweak the schedule, do whatever you want. But the starting is non-negotiable. So you have to start. And this works really well for me because all of those rationalizations are a little bit of a negotiation that I'm trying to engage my brain in to convince me to do this at a later time. So if I take the negotiation off the table and I essentially make the starting not optional, i.e., I have to do 10 minutes, then what I often find happens is that I will start to get into a bit of a rhythm with the task. I'll get in the flow. I'll start to enjoy it, or I'll lose myself in it. And before I know it, I've overcome the resistance, the friction of starting, and gotten into the task itself. I really, really like this reframe for myself. Essentially, it's taking any opportunity to negotiate with myself off the table. I've decided that I'm starting at 9 a.m. I have to do at least 10 minutes, and then I can make a decision about whether or not I want to continue or not. I'll offer that to you. It can look a little bit different. Some people like to play with 5 minutes. Some people like to play with a little bit longer. It doesn't really matter. The expression that I also tell myself in this regard is that motivation follows starting. So instead of waiting for motivation to get started, I get started and then I find motivation. That one also really helps me. Same thing, 10-minute rule, motivation follows starting. Okay. That's in terms of the starting. Now let's say that you've started and you really don't have any trouble getting started on a task. But what you do have trouble with is staying focused, staying on task. You find it's really that your brain it's really easy for you to get distracted. And you may or may not even be aware of why you're allowing yourself to be distracted. It might just show up as a thought like, I should check Facebook. I should go get a snack. I should turn on the air conditioning. I should turn on the heat. So there's a lot of different rationalizations that your brain is offering to you that want to distract you, want to get you off of track. And the tricky bit with staying on task when the urge is barely even conscious is that you might not even recognize that it is an urge, that it is a distraction until you find yourself surfing through Facebook and 20 minutes has gone by. So if you're in that boat where the the urge to do something different off task is barely even perceptible to you, what I'll invite you to do is just to create some awareness around those thoughts. So if you do find yourself unconsciously getting off track, when you do discover it, so you're 20 minutes into a Facebook search or you're looking up something on the internet that you've told yourself that is really relevant and important to this task, when you just finally do clue in to becoming on to yourself, what I'll invite you to do is just take a moment to sort of think about what the thought and the feeling is that kind of got you off track in the first place. And likely it's got something to do with the wording I should. I should do something else right now. Or I can't get started, or I can't continue until I have this one thing. So if you are able to identify the thought there, then what you can do is now that you're on to yourself, you can start to keep track of these thoughts. And that will just help you to create more awareness around all of this. And what I also like to do is I like to reward myself when I catch myself thinking one of these thoughts. I use a little bit of a point system. And so um, when I find myself slipping off track, or I'm able to identify the thought even in the moment, I give myself a little bit of a point to recognize that I am building awareness, that I'm getting more cognizant of what my brain is doing. One further little tip or trick, Jedi mind trick that you can use in terms of focus and creating awareness is that once you start to identify these I should thoughts in the moment, you could preface them with I'm having the thought that I should check Facebook right now. I'm having the thought. What this does is this creates a little bit of a distance between you and the thought. Because when it's unconscious and you're not even really aware that it's happening, you don't realize that it is just a thought, just a suggestion, just an invitation. It feels more like a command because it's operating under the level of consciousness. So it just feels like, oh, this is what we're doing right now. So there's no optionality. It feels like there's no choice around that. So once you become aware of the thought and you want to build a little bit of distance between you and that thought, you can start it off with, isn't it interesting? I'm having the thought that I should check Facebook right now. Okay. If you have any more questions around that, or if you're building awareness around focus and you want to take it a step further, take it to one of those coaching opportunities that I mentioned at the beginning, either to your private coaching, the group coaching sessions, or to the coaching Q&A on our membership site under the coaching tab. Okay, great. All right, the third and final stage where our brains might try to sidetrack us is around completion and submission. Now, this is one area where I've done a lot of work, and you'll see it showing up a lot too if you feel like you're confused about how much time to give yourself. There's an idea in our brains that we need a lot of time to get it to the stage where it's ready to be completed and submitted. Now, for those of us with a little bit of a perfectionist tendency, we start to recognize that that stage where we're going to feel comfortable with it kind of is an elusive target. It's a mirage that we're chasing in the desert. So again, once we're on to ourselves a little bit around the fact that we never quite feel comfortable in completing and submitting it, that's when we can start to recognize those rationalizations that are popping up when it's time to finish something. So it might look something like that rationalization might look something like it needs a little bit more work, just a little bit more time. Or something like, I should keep going. I don't really need to finish this at 10. I can reschedule my 10 o'clock, or I can work through my break and I'll just keep going until it's finished. Last, but certainly not least, something like, I'll finish this later. So maybe I stop at the scheduled time, 10 o'clock, but I don't actually wrap it up and submit it because I tell myself that there will be more time to finish it later. So you'll know that you're in this trap if you have a lot of unfinished work that's sort of percolating under the surface and you're not necessarily submitting your work. Now, we'll take a moment right now just to think about what this might look like for yourself. Do you have any struggle around completing things? Or maybe you complete them, but you don't actually hit the trigger in terms of submitting them, pressing the release button or the send button or whatever that looks like. Do you have any obstacles there? Now, if you do, if this is something that you want some help with, I'll offer you my reframe here. So when I notice a rationalization like this, what I'll do is even before I get to the stage where 10 o'clock is arriving, it's at the estimation stage. I remind myself that I can give myself as much time as I want in advance, but in the moment, I cannot change that deadline. It's kind of like my coach likes to equate it to when you're doing a research paper or an exam in university or back in high school, and you were given a deadline, and that deadline was not negotiable. So even if you felt like you didn't have enough time to get it to where you wanted it to be, you still just had to get it done. So that's how I want you to treat the deadlines that you give to yourself. And also work towards a stage where it's, my coach likes to say B minus work. I like to think about it as like 80%. 80% completion is good enough. And when my brain wants to argue with me about that, what I'll often say to myself is progress is better than perfection. Perfection never gets completed, never gets done, never gets submitted. Progress, 80% on the other hand, leaves opportunity for me to put it out there and then also iterate after the fact if I so choose to. But my time, that incremental time that I spend bringing it to perfection is usually not worth the time, effort, and all of the mental space required to bring it from the 80% up to the 100%. So I remind myself of that in the moment when I'm hearing any of these rationalizations kind of popping into my brain. Then I remind myself that the deadline is non-negotiable, that my intent, my objective is to bring it to 80% and get it out into the world. I can help people more with 80% of my work than nothing at all. So progress is better than perfection. All right. If this is something that you struggle with, please bring it to one of your coaching opportunities. And I'll just go over next steps in terms of what's coming up. So for those of you who are interested in more time management tips, I have a webinar coming up this Thursday, July 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific. The registration link is on my website, financialwellnesscoach.ca, under the workshops tab. You'll see a link there to register for this webinar. And I'm going to go over 4 of my favorite time management strategies. Those 4 strategies are goal setting, prioritization, planning, and more about follow through. So if this has been something that has been helpful, I'll invite you to check out that free webinar on Thursday, 9 a.m. I'd also like to make you aware of another peaceful productivity online class that I'm doing in August. It starts August 11th. And the intent here is to get us organized and in control of our calendars before September for what's going to be likely a very busy September for many of us. So my intent here is to help you get organized, give you all of my favorite time management strategies, give it to you over the course of a month so that there's time to apply some of the strategies and tweak them in between sessions. The in-class time is also amazing. That was the favorite part of many of the people who took a similar class in June, was the discussion and the opportunities for conversation around the strategies in the live class. The replays will also be posted on our private class website too. If you aren't able to make the class time live, you can always watch the replay later. And the last thing that I'll mention about the online class is that it also comes with a free private coaching session, 45-minute private coaching session, where we can sort of flesh out your strategy in terms of time management and look for your specific customized opportunities for whatever resistance and obstacles are coming up for you. So the early bird registration closes for that at the end of July. Check it out under membership on my Financial Wellness Coach website. There's a tab there called online class. I think I said membership. I meant online class. Okay, so that's the second opportunity. And last but certainly not least, if you're not yet a member of the Peaceful Productivity membership, I'll invite you to check us out. Go to the Financial Wellness Coach website, and there is a tab there called membership. And for just $20 a month, you have the opportunity to get private coaching, group coaching, get your coaching questions answered, as I mentioned earlier. There's also 6 modules of content, which includes worksheets and videos, and also lots of opportunities for group discussion there. So we've got a peaceful productivity community building over there. All right. If you have any questions about any of this, please flip me an email, kim@financialwellnesscoach.ca. I'm wishing you all much peaceful productivity. Take care, everyone.